Hi, Hibiscus. How are you? Let's see. Hi, friends. Hi, Sammy. Okay. I am just... Well, first of all, can y'all hear me okay? That's the first thing I guess I want to say. Hi, Miss Iva. Glad you could join. Let's see. I was looking for Stacy, who's going to be coming up first, so just hold tight. I know she's going to be coming on here in just a second. And I do see Kyla. I was just thinking about that. I haven't really thought about having a moderator. I think one of my girls that was a moderator on my old account is on here, but I don't know that I ever set her up to be a moderator on here. But let's pray to God. Tonight's a nice night and not a lot of craziness and people we have to block. That would be a beautiful thing, right? All right. Well, I'm just going to talk here for a few minutes. I know my girl Stacy is going to be joining here in a few minutes. If you don't know who Stacy is, she is one of Amy's best friends, and she is who helps me over on some of our other social media platforms. So you may have seen her name over there quite a bit. So it's a big day today. I saw Iva was on here just a few minutes ago. It's a disappointing day, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I don't really... There's Kyla's. Kyla's Cozy Chaos. Can you maybe go and check on Stacy and see if she's having trouble, Miss Kyla? Because I am not seeing her show up here, and I know she wants to be on here. So, hey, Miss Carrie. I just saw Carrie's on here. I think I'd love to have you, Carrie, come up. So while oh, here she is finally. Good Lord. All right, I just sent you an invite, Stacy. There you are, girl.
You already want to know what I just did.
I don't. We'll have that conversation after this. All right.
I started my own live.
All right. I'll help you afterwards. All right. So let's get started. I want to keep going. We got some people on here. We did start this today on purpose. We could have done this before today, but we're gonna today would be a perfect opportunity to. All right, Stacy, you're gonna have to mute yourself, girl.
I dropped the phone.
Okay, there you go. And when you're ready to talk, just unmute it. But so yes, today is the 28th anniversary of Amy Lynn Bradley going missing, and so we've been thinking for quite some time, honestly, like what can we do next? And a lot of times when we're doing lives, one of the things that I recognize is that there are lots of people that are actually still learning about Amy's story. And I'll see what appears to me to be very basic questions that we've answered a lot. But then I have to remember we were answering them a lot back in July and August and September. And then there's people that are just now finding out about Amy's story, and they've got a lot of questions too. And so we wanted to create this Amy Bradley Forum. Specifically, we're going to do this every Tuesday night at 7:30. We will have guests join us on certain days when it makes sense. I will tell you that Midnight Mystery Archive is going to join us here in just a little bit to talk about the first episode of his 12 series podcast that came out today, and kind of tell you about what you can look forward to, what's going to be coming over the next 12 weeks. But today, actually, Chris Fenwick, who is the videographer that's featured in the Netflix show, he reached out and he's like, hey, I'd like to join that forum. So I don't know if he's going to join us tonight, but he wants to join us in the future. Of course, we'll have some family members on at times. And there's Miss Stacy now. Now I can see her face. But, we definitely want to have an opportunity for you all to ask questions. And they can be as basic as, oh, Chris is here. It looks like, so let me see if Chris Fenwick, people, hold on one second. I'm going to see if I can. Okay. I just sent you a request, Chris, and if it will allow you to come on up, then look at you. And now I don't know if you can turn on your video or not yet. That part I wasn't sure about. If you want, you don't have to. I'm just saying if you wanted to. That's the part I wasn't sure if you could or not.
I need a box.
Yeah, I can see your profile picture, but I don't know if they'll let you do that yet. This is his first time going live, people. So if you're wondering what's happening, but this is an example of what we kind of want to do, moving forward. There are a lot of things that we've tried to convey through social media the best we could to kind of tell Amy's true story. A lot of times, I don't know if we don't write it correctly, if people don't read it correctly. I think this might be a better opportunity for us to actually talk and have conversations, and for you all to ask us questions, and for us to be able to really go into detail in answering those questions to help you. But Chris had reached out to me earlier today. We put out some information about the video involving his part in that Netflix show earlier. So before we get there, I just feel like, we have to, what did they say? What is it when they say something's in the room? The elephant in the room? I feel like there's an elephant in the room. My chest is heavy today. I felt anxious all day. I don't think any of us wanted to be here, if we're being completely honest. I think the Bradleys really thought that the Netflix show was just going to be this amazing, incredible experience that was going to bring worldwide attention, to their daughter. And in fact, it did, even the negative. And that would finally, bring some answers to this family. And so it is disheartening that happened back on July 16th of last year. And here we are now on March 24th on another anniversary. So it is disappointing, and it is a sad day. I think we've all been feeling it over probably the last week. And, I think the thing I really want to tell you all is that while today is sad, it changes nothing. We move forward. We keep looking. We keep searching. We keep finding answers until, however long it takes is however long we're going to do it. So I hate it for Iva. I hate it for Ron. I hate it for Brad. But we're still here. We're not going anywhere. We'll keep telling the story. And that's why we wanted to kick this off today. Let's keep going. So, Chris, well, first of all, there's Stacy down there. And just to introduce Stacy, she is one of Amy's best friends. Stacy, you can tell your story. You don't need me to tell that.
I don't like to talk, but I'm here because of Amy. We were very close, and I've been just as close with her family over the last 30 years or more. So it's been hard, to say the least. And this anniversary today, I call it a mark, the 28-year mark. I just don't want to associate a positive, because it's difficult. But to be honest, it's, the show that was aired was emotional roller coaster, emotional time for me. There was a lot of things that I questioned, and because I'm so close to Ron, Brad, and Iva, and you, and learning that you and I used to work together as well, back in the day, it's helped. And
Yeah. I can literally hear your dog snoring. The whole time I was like, what is that noise? I'm like, that's her dog snoring. I just finally figured that out. So sorry about that. That's okay.
he
So
has to, if he's not next to me, you'll hear him crying for me. But
and I will just say real quick to everyone that's on here, yes, you all have seen me out here doing lives and stuff with Brad. But there's a whole team of people that are working and offering their time and their energy and their efforts. And Stacy's one of them. So you might not see her face as often, but she's on all of the group chats with me. She's in all of the meetings with me. She does, just as much work as I do. So, and there's another friend named Tracy who helps us as well. But then there's so many other people too, like even beyond just the social media aspect of it. So I just want you to know, I'm not a one-man machine over here. We're a collective team. We all have our roles, and we all, do the best we can to kind of keep up. I think people forget sometimes that this isn't our only thing. I'm a mom. Stacy's a mom. We both have jobs. We both have parents. My dad just passed away, but, we still have other parents, my mom and her parents that, need assistance. So we do the best we can on here to help the Bradleys, but we're always looking for help. So that's why social media has become so helpful to us. We can jump on here, have a conversation with you all, and then, you all want to help us to get the messages out there. So we do appreciate that. All right, so I do want to scroll back here. I'm not sure if there were any questions while I was just saying hello. So what I guess I would ask is that, oh my God, it just said 52. All right, let me scroll back. My audio is messed up. Is my audio messed up? I'm sorry, I'm just doing that.
yes, it is a little messed up.
How about now? Did that fix that?
You sound good now.
Yeah, must have been. Okay, I'll have to figure that part. All right, thank y'all for telling me that. The dogs were, okay, they were talking about the dog too. All right, I was trying to scroll back to see if there were any questions that came up that I might have missed while we were talking.
How is it y'all can hear my dog snoring?
Because he's right there by your phone. I can still hear him. Yep. I'm gonna have Chris come up here and talk for a second, and maybe you can mute. Well,
Absolutely.
all right. And let's see. All right. If y'all asked a question, I apologize. I might have missed it, but you can put them in the chat now if you want, and I'll pay attention. But I do want to bring up Chris. Chris Fenwick is the videographer that was featured in the Netflix show. He was working for a third-party company, and he was aboard the boat to do videography for this company. And he just happened to catch, as part of his work, he's the one that caught Amy dancing with Yellow. This week, actually, I take that back. I forget what date, but last week on Iva's birthday, actually, Brad and I had done a live the night before. And we had talked about what had happened with Chris Fenwick in regards to that show and what the production company had done. We've known this for quite some time, but it was not our story to share. And then I was talking to Chris on Iva's birthday. And then in the midst of that conversation, was very funny, Chris, by the way, out of nowhere, he sends me back a link and he has posted that video up onto X and he's now put it out there. And I'm going, what just happened? Like literally what just happened. But the short version, real quick, just to set this up for Chris, is that he was the only one that we know of. If there's anybody else, we'd love to know. But he's the only one that we know of that actually thought of recording his interview when he got interviewed by the production company that was doing the Netflix show. I don't know if that came from being a videographer and just having that intuition, but he set up his own camera and he recorded his entire conversation. And when he watched the show, he knew that he hadn't said that. And so then he went back to his interview, watched it and said, yep, I never said that. And we're referring to the part where the tape of Amy and Yellow, they are dancing. I'm going to go let him tell this story, but basically Chris had the tape, passed it on to some people, but the entertainment company made it sound like he gave that tape to the FBI, which is not what he said. So at any rate, Mr. Chris Fenwick, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate that.
I don't think there's anything else for me to say. I think you pretty much nailed it.
There's a lot more. I just wanted to kind of give the basis of it, but yeah, give them the details. Tell them the whole story. They're asking for it. They're in there over here saying, tell us the whole story.
So, yes, when I was asked to participate, I've told Iva and Ron and Brad since I first met them, which was about a year and a half after their cruise. I'll say the cruise because I was on it too, working. You never have to ask, hey, like they called me when they wanted me to meet you. Hey, we'd like to give your number to our friend Sandy. Are you okay talking to her? I said, just Iva, all you have to do is say, you're going to get a call from Sandy, answer, just whatever you want, anything you want. And so when Iva contacted me and said, hey, these people are going to do this show on the Netflix. Would you be willing? Of course, yes. So I offered to drive down there. A lot of people think that, ooh, you're so rich. You were on Netflix now. You obviously don't get paid for any of that. I did get a hotel room for a night, maybe two. I think it was two. I paid for my own gas. I drove from San Francisco to LA, so it's 400 miles or whatever. But I offered to do that because I don't like to fly. And they kind of like Brad, and they had rented a house, like an Airbnb thing, and I think they shot like 3 or 4 interviews that day, and I was just one of the people that they interviewed. And if you don't know, to put together a show like that, you sit down with a lot of people, you talk to a lot of people. And in the production world, they have a thing they call it the shooting ratio. Like, how much did you shoot versus how much did you use? And in a show of this type, I'm a little uncomfortable calling it a documentary, but in a show of this type, the shooting ratio is quite high. You shoot a lot and you don't use a lot. As you know, because Brad has talked about it, they sat down and spent 5 hours with Amy's boyfriend at the time that she was abducted by Yellow and the people from Royal Caribbean. And they didn't use, the production company decided to not use any of that. Now, I've been in this business for 4 decades, and part of that is what probably, and by the way, if I start talking too much, just say shut up and I'll be done.
Yeah.
But part of me, it's what makes me extremely skeptical, extremely cautious, extremely suspicious. And so if you look at these little phones that we're sitting here talking on, it's an amazing piece of technology. And I just turned on the Apple video camera and I hit record and I set it on a table right outside of the frame where I was being interviewed. And you've seen the shot because I showed you that video and I've now posted it. And I just it was I think it was like 2 hours and 20 minutes, I believe, that we talked that day. And I'm a pretty minor part of the story. And, but when I was, and so then we finished the interview. And at one point in the interview, I think I even said to the gentleman conducting the interview, I said, I know what you guys do. You can edit something to make it sound like anything you want. That's why I have my own recording right there. And he didn't realize that I had very casually hit record and sat down in my chair. And so by the end of the interview, he was very uncomfortable with the fact that I had that video. And he told me, he had contractual obligations with Netflix, because I don't know if you know this, Netflix didn't make that show. They paid for that show, and it's a business. And if you make shows to put on Netflix, you sit down and you say, hey, we'd like to make this show, and it's about this thing, and how much will you pay us? And they probably offer some amount of money. And then you look at it and you go, okay, how much show do I have to produce for that amount of money? And I'm going to assume, and I've never made anything for Netflix, but there's a discussion. Well, we'd like to do a 2-part series. Well, we want 10 parts. No, we're not going to do 10. How about 5 parts? No, we could do 3. What? And that's probably what happens. I'm assuming there's some sort of a negotiation, and maybe the production company says, we have enough material to make a 3-part series. But typically what will happen is Netflix will say, we're only willing to pay this much for the show. How much can you give us? Or some iteration of that. Well, for this much money, we can give you 3 episodes. Because if you think about it, Netflix is not broadcast television. It's not like they have a 2-hour time block where they have a certain amount of commercials that have to roll at a certain time. Otherwise, Coca-Cola doesn't give the network their money. So Netflix can play a show of any length whatsoever, right? And frankly, there's a lot of TV time to fill up for shows. And I'm sure there's balances of, well, we got to keep things changing. And if something runs too long, people will tune away. But the bottom line is we need people to watch Netflix, and we need to sell subscriptions to Netflix. And so in that regard, this show is a long form advertisement for Netflix. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've heard this, but if you think about sitting in front of your television and watching Netflix, many people, and it's funny, I watch our kids and even my wife and I and the whole family, you sit there and you watch TV, but everybody's got their damn phone in their hand, and they're doom scrolling something or other. And so Netflix has come to the realization, and this has been in the news, that people are not paying attention when they're watching a show. And so there is a functionality, that there's a trick as you're putting together a show, there's a thing they call it exposition. And exposition is a way of explaining something that's complicated usually so that the audience doesn't get lost. Okay. You need to have exposition so the audience doesn't get lost, because let's face it, if you're doing think about a Law and Order type thing, or some sort of forensic files or whatever. Well, I'm not a doctor, so I don't understand, that DNA can go bad or whatever. So you usually put like a foil, you put sort of a junior person in the scene. And so the junior person, you've seen this in a show, I promise, where they go, gee, I don't quite understand. Could you explain that to me? And then they get to interject their exposition. Well, Netflix has told producers that when you make a movie for Netflix, you need to explain what's going on. You need a lot of exposition, and you need to do it multiple times, because we're noticing that people are getting bored. They don't understand what's going on because they're doom scrolling on their phone while they're watching a TV show. And so they are telling producers, you need to put more exposition in order to keep them. So the bottom line is, Netflix is a business. They're not in the business of finding lost people. They're in the business of selling subscriptions.
Yeah.
And that is first and foremost what they want to do. So I've had this discussion with Brad, and I totally agree that it is odd that they interviewed Amy's boyfriend for 5 hours and used none of it. But you see, that story, that she's dating this guy, she's dating a guy as she gets on the boat, and they were so involved with each other that when the Bradleys went back to Curacao a month later or 2 months later, you probably know better, that the boyfriend went with them. But that doesn't make the TV show. And the reason it doesn't make the TV show, likely, I can only speculate, is that the story starts to get complicated. And then you say, well, what is the most interesting part of the story? What is going to hold on to the audience? What can we offer up good exposition for? Because again, Netflix needs you to watch the show. This is all about business. It's big business. And so the part that is more interesting is that, she comes from this, very traditional, Southern family, but she's, is she a bisexual? Whatever. It's like, that just sounds good. And then you have, the story about the message in the bottle. They went so far as to make that one of the episode titles.
Yeah.
Because that's salacious. That's exciting. Let's talk about that. The fact that she was actually dating a guy at the time, that's boring. Now, I apologize. I kind of went off on a tangent there. Again, I'm sorry. So back to my thing, the story about the tape. When I was being interviewed, one of the questions that they asked me was, do you think the videotape holds any answers about Amy? And I said, no, it absolutely doesn't. And I explicitly said, what's interesting about the video that I put together was not what was on the video, but it was the journey that the tape took after I gave it to Mike McCord. Now, for those of you who are new to the story, Mike McCord was Ron Bradley's boss. The Bradleys were on the boat because Ron Bradley's a great salesman, and he did really good that year. So his boss was taking his best employees on what they call an incentives trip. Oh my goodness, my battery's dying. And I might have to change up a bunch of stuff here. And so that's why they were on the trip. I gave the videotape to Ron McCord, and Ron McCord said to me morning, Mike McCord, sorry. He said, thank you. I will give this to the authorities. And then he gave it to the ship security. And then hours later, ship security's on the phone to my room saying, are you the guy with the videotape? I need to get your master tapes. And I said, yes, I'm the guy with the videotape. You can pound sand. And he said, well, I'm working with the FBI. And I'm like, call your bluff. I don't believe it. If you are, have the FBI come to me. And they never did. That's the story. Royal Caribbean and the ship security was actively trying to, what do they call it? Squash the evidence. They were trying to hide information that was relevant and pertinent. And again, the Bradys didn't actually find out that this tape ever existed until a year later. Now, I want to address something that I hear people churning about a lot. Why didn't Ron McCord give them that videotape? Mike McCord. Yeah. Mike, why didn't Mike McCord give the Bradleys the videotape? And I'll tell you why. And this was a discussion I had with Iva a few months ago. If you go back and try and live inside that reality that the Bradleys were living in, it was panic and chaos. And it was wrapped in a blanket of uncertainty and more chaos and a little sprinkling of panic on top of all that. It was insanity. And the Bradleys have had nothing but beautiful things to say about Mike McCord and all that he did for the family in the days and weeks and months and years after Mike is no longer with us. So Mike had nothing to do with trying to hide it. He did what he thought was right. And he very likely had forgotten that he had done that.
Yeah. I had
It was
somebody
just one of a bazillion things. So then, fast forward, I sit down to watch the first episode of the show, and I'm sitting there listening to it, and I hear the sentence, and I'm like, I never said that. And the sentence that they fabricated, that the production company fabricated from my 2 hours and 20 minutes of interview was, and I gave it to the FBI. So so I went to my room, I went through all my videotapes, I found the shots of Amy, and I told them that I literally said, and I gave it to Mike, and I explained. And the reason why this is all in the original recording. The reason this is important is because it shows that Royal Caribbean was hiding stuff. So why do they not put it in the show? Well, get back to, it's too complicated. You have to introduce a new character. Mike McCord is not mentioned in the 3-part documentary. And I say that D with a lowercase d documentary. It's really just a show. It's not a documentary. Documents what actually happened. When they start taking my words and making me say things that I didn't say, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not comfortable calling it a documentary. I know that they believe they made a documentary, but it's entertainment. It's a little show. It's a long form advertisement for Netflix at this point. They didn't tell us what actually happened. They told us a story, but not necessarily the story. So I ended up going, and I loaded my 2.5 hour interview, 2 hour, 20-minute interview into my editing software. And I have the ability to digitally listen to every word, transcribe it, make it searchable. And then I started reconstructing the sentence. Where did I say the word and? And I can see there, I've said the word and, 60 times. And I started listening to each one. And I'm listening to the inflection, and I'm listening. And, oh, that's the one. Put it in a timeline. I gave it to. Listen. I only said that a few times. Oh, find it, link it together. The FBI. Where did I say the words FBI? I probably said it 3, 4, 5 times. Find the right inflection. And finally, I got the 3 portions of the sentence. And they had pulled my words from, 90 minutes, from the beginning to end, 90 minutes. Interestingly enough, in exact reverse order, doesn't matter. But they fabricated a sentence that not only did I not say, because in the editorial process, quite often we edit things. Thank you, honey. Okay, thanks. Not only do we edit things to make them shorter or more clear. I mean, these are typical things. I need to condense something. I need to make it more clear. But what I have never done in my 40 years of being a video editor, I never created a new story.
Right.
And I said new, N-E-W, not news. Just, you don't get to make just a whole new story. And I gave it to the FBI, not what I said.
Right.
And I was explicit that saying that the journey that the tape took was the story. And they misrepresented exactly what I told them. In their minds, I'm going to assume they're thinking, well, we just kind of had to get to the point, and that was the easiest way to, just kind of get rid of, some of the confusing stuff. Yeah, fine. But now you're not documenting what happened. You're creating a whole new story. And frankly, that angers me.
Yeah.
It angers me that I was misrepresented that way.
Yes, most definitely, but it also irritates the Bradley family because it makes it seem like, the FBI had the tape. What's the big deal? No, the big deal here is that ship security had the tape, and the tape did not get to the FBI. That's the big deal here. But they made you think in that show that Chris himself is the one that gave that tape to the FBI. That did not happen.
As a matter of fact,
It's
to my
upsetting.
knowledge,
Many levels.
the FBI never got a copy of the tape because they didn't get it from me. They never contacted me. They never said, hey, are you the guy with the videotape? We'd like to see that. Never once.
Right.
So Honestly, I don't know how the FBI has it. Good story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Write that down. It probably would be the Bradleys, but I don't know that either, but we can ask. So I got a couple of questions for you, Chris, real quick before Kevin is on here now. Mr. We're going to talk about the episode that came out today on his podcast series. But Chris, someone had said, why were you suspicious of the FBI and the security? No one else was at that stage. Everyone was cooperating. And I think...
to be clear, I'm sorry, finish your question. I cut you off.
No, I think that answer's real quick and simple. So I thought I'd throw that one to you real quick.
So I tell you, I have a piece of paper on my computer screen here that says, language fails us, because it's so true. Quite often our words fail us and we don't use them well. We don't use the right word. We connect things that are wrongfully connected. I earlier said I'm very suspicious. I'm very whatever. I wasn't at the time, 28 years ago. I wasn't suspicious of ship security.
Right.
I wasn't suspicious of the FBI. I was just a little tiny cog in this big story. And when I realized I had video of Amy dancing with Yellow, I gave it to the family. And I've told this story before, but I saw the Bradleys. I felt uncomfortable. It's horribly awkward to approach a family and go, hey, I'm just a creepy video editor, and I have video of your daughter dancing with the creepy guy. And here, would you like to have a copy of it? Yeah. And so when I saw Mike McCord, who I had seen the night before, obviously with the family, obviously their inner circle, and he stood up to get a cup of coffee, I scurried over and I said, excuse me, you're with the family of the missing girl, correct? I didn't even know their name at the time. I don't think, maybe it was on the flyer. And I said, and he said, yes. And I said, well, I have video of her dancing the evening she disappeared. And immediately Mike said, was she dancing with that bass player? And I said, yes, she was. And he goes, thank you. I will get this to the authorities. What I did say earlier, I tend to be a very suspicious. I wasn't at the time suspicious of security and the FBI, although today, I got news for you, there's no chance in hell I'd ever set foot on a cruise ship. What I was saying earlier that I was insanely suspicious of is people in my business, because I know what we do. And so I wanted to have my own recording. And I highly recommend, if you ever sit down to do anything sort of official, or even if you're on somebody's like podcast, set up your phone, hit record.
Yes.
You never know what people are going to do to your words. And also I wanted to point out, just this week, and I think I texted you this the other morning, or maybe that was last week, sorry. There was that gentleman who had been questioned about voter fraud and the Dominion voting systems, I believe in Georgia. I could have that wrong. And he had testified in front of Congress and gave this big, long thing. And in his congressional hearing, I guess, I don't know what it's called, big fancy desks and all the people in suits. I'm just a t-shirt guy. He said they lifted, when they published it like on C-SPAN or whatever, they lifted 10 seconds out of his congressional testimony. And it was the most important testimony, the most important portion of the testimony, saying, I have definitive 100% proof that voter fraud took place, and I can show you how it's done. It's really easy to do. Let me know. I'll show you at any time.
Right.
Okay. They lifted that out, and in the shot, you could see he's sitting there and he's got like his laptop in front of him, and you just know this dude's a gangster. He's a media gangster. He hit record before he started talking.
Yeah.
Same deal.
Thank you, Chris, first of all, for joining us. And you are more than welcome to stay on here. So please don't think that I'm telling you to jump off. I'm just saying, if you have
just
to.
Don't let me take over.
No, but I do have to get up to Midnight Mystery. But before I do, I just want to circle back. There's a couple of new people in here that I don't know their names, and we said we wanted this to be a forum where we're answering questions. And I think, we're going to do this every Tuesday night because we know that it's hard to convey a lot of information in a short amount of time. So that's why we're going to do this. But there's someone on here named Lenny that has been asking a lot of questions, and I'm watching them. I think the one thing I want to just convey about the Chris Fenwick is that when Chris Fenwick got involved with the Bradleys, it's on Friday morning. It's not on Tuesday morning. Amy went missing on Tuesday, March 24th. The Bradleys get back on the ship because they got off that day, but they flew, caught up to the ship, and boarded it again on Thursday, the 26th. So did the FBI. They were on the ship as well. There are 2 eyewitnesses that came forward because that's the day that the ship finally decided to put up a flyer saying that we have a missing woman, 2.5 days later. And the eyewitnesses now see that flyer and went to ship security. 2 of those girls were interviewed for over 90 minutes. The FBI's on the boat. The Bradleys are on the boat. But the ship security never came and told either one of them that there were eyewitnesses now that were coming forward because of this flyer saying that they had in fact seen Amy around 6 a.m. While Iva and Brad are out just walking on Friday morning, just trying to retrace steps, trying to figure out what may have happened, is when they, by the grace of God, ran into 2 of those eyewitnesses. It's 3:30 in the morning. They learned, that's how they found out that people had seen Amy. It was because the actual eyewitnesses ran into the Bradleys. So that is when all of that commotion started, and that's when Chris heard it and came out. So at this point, you have got Ron, Iva, Brad, 2 eyewitnesses, Mike McCord, all of these people are out here screaming for the FBI to get up, that there are eyewitnesses now that have seen Amy and know, where she was at this time. So I think that's why probably a little suspicious, because the whole situation was weird, the whole week. They're not even putting out a flyer until Thursday. There's a lot of things that happened on the actual day that Amy went missing that the ship personnel, staff, security, whatever you want to call them, also did not do. So there's a lot of reasons to wonder what was happening on that ship. Maybe that's something that we'll talk about in depth on a future one, but I've seen your comments coming up quite often, and I don't think that you probably know the story as well. So I encourage you to keep tuning in on Tuesday evenings, because I think you could learn a lot from, what hasn't been told in that Netflix show. And then there was one quick question I want to get to. Someone said, why are the Bradleys asking for it to go to Homeland Security? At one point, we had even talked about, should we ask them to close the case? So that way the family could at least have the information. Then I guess after discussion and with other people that have a much higher position than myself, they said, no, we don't want it closed, because if it gets closed, then we don't have the reward. We don't have the resources of the FBI. So we're like, well, can we just get a new team? Because the team that we have, it's been 28 years. Maybe we need a new a set of fresh eyes. Sorry, I couldn't get that out. With Homeland Security, they would have more jurisdiction, because most people don't know that when you're off 12 miles off of land, you are in international waters. And so that becomes a problem. They weren't in an American territory. They were at Curacao. I think they were flying a Norwegian flag. So there's a lot of things to be considered, and Homeland Security may have more jurisdiction than the FBI would. So that was one of the reasons why we had talked about that. Okay, so let me go.
Hey, really quick, Sandy, on that topic of jurisdiction. So that's going to be the 4th episode of the podcast. And yesterday I interviewed a gentleman named Michael Winkleman, who is a partner at Lipkin Margulies Winkleman in Miami. And his entire career has been suing cruise lines. And that's exactly what I talked about with him yesterday. he had a lot of really good insights related to jurisdiction, as well as with the FBI and, potential explanations around the delay, which has to do with jurisdiction.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. So let's segue to you. I know there's a couple questions. I'm going to run back and try to write them down while Mr. Midnight Mystery Archive is talking. But that was something that he has been working on with the family for quite some time. He was someone that was over here on TikTok way back, right when the show had first come out, that had jumped on board and was a huge advocate for the family. And then he came back later on and he's like, I really, after seeing everything that has happened, like, I think I want to really take this on and take my time with it and, do a 12-part series. So today was the first episode. I had already listened to it. I don't know if all of you have been able to listen to his podcast yet today, but I definitely encourage you to go and do that. That episode was just about Amy, and I love that he did that. Most people just want to jump right in. They want to, I get it. I mean, we're trying to figure out a mystery, so give me the mystery. But he did something different, and that episode is just Ron and Iva and Brad and Stacy just talking about who Amy is. And I thought it was just a great reminder that we are, she's not just someone that made a Netflix show. She's a real human being who's been missing for 28 years, who had a whole happy, full life. And Midnight Mystery Archive, it's on Apple Podcast, it's on Spotify.
YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Okay. iHeartRadio as well, I think.
Yep,
right?
iHeartRadio. I mean, yeah, anywhere you stream episodes, you can do it right from the homepage of the website, midnightmysteryarchive.com. So pick your poison. You can get it anywhere you want it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, back a few months ago, I had dinner with Brad and I said, I think I really want to do this. And he's like, yeah, if you think you could do it, we'd love to have you do it. And, so I've been working on it now for probably the better part of 4 months. And honestly, for me, Amy's story's been told in a lot of different forums. And you guys were talking about it kind of right when I came on. Think about Netflix, right? They've probably got 100 hours of interviews and content that gets condensed down into 3 40-minute episodes. So what that means is invariably you're going to be missing so much of Amy's story. And what I really want to do is I want to look at different aspects of Amy's story and tell it in a much fuller way than it's probably been told before. And to me, you can't tell Amy's story without talking about Amy. And it's an easy trap for a documentary to fall down. It's an easy trap for a podcaster to fall down because we're just automatically drawn to the mysterious aspect of the story. And I think that's just human nature. When there's not an answer, you seek an answer. But to me, getting an answer or trying to find an answer doesn't matter if you don't have a good understanding of who the person is and how important that person is, how much they're loved, how much they were cared for, the fact that they've got a mom and a dad and a brother and all these friends that are left behind to ask all these questions. And I really wanted to tell people about Amy through the memories and the words of those who are closest to her.
Well, it's an excellent job on the first one. I know you worked with Brad on episode 2. Can you explain to us how that's going to come out so people can know, like, yes, the first episode is out today. What's your timeline and time frame for future episodes?
So I'm going to put something out tomorrow on social media just to kind of give everybody a schedule. So typically my release schedule is I do full episodes on Friday. I do mini episodes on Monday. This is unique because you have the 28th anniversary. So I moved the first episode to coincide with that anniversary. So episode 2 is actually going to release next Friday, April 3rd, and then it'll be every Friday after through the entire 12-part series.
Okay. Now, I will say that you and I worked on episode 3, so I do know what that one is going to be. Episode 3 is more about getting to the nitty
The
gritty,
morning,
about
yeah,
the
the
details
morning of,
what's
and
happening.
really getting into those details. And you've been fantastic and just kind of guiding me along, making sure that one, the details are right, but two, that there are details that I might have missed that are really, really central to that morning.
Yeah. It's what we have found, yourself included, but other people, is that it's been 28 years. There's a lot of stories that have been told. And a lot of people will go, I pulled up a story about someone that I want to, that's, and when I pulled up the story this afternoon, like trying to figure out which one I was going to use, I had complete anxiety because I'm like, I don't even know if I'm telling the right story. You feel like you're pulling it from a credible source. And I'm like, man, and I know that now after going through all of this with the Bradleys, like there's so much out there that, a journalist misspeaks or they miswrite or whatever, but they don't go back and change those things. So then that kind of stuff is just living out there and then it gets brought back on the family. So,
and I think that's one of the hardest parts about this case is that and I don't really know the reason for it, but it is very polarizing. There is a small group of people that are very vocal that, something not sinister happened, that Amy did something by choice. I mean, there's that group out there. And the problem with that is, especially like for me, who I dig into a lot of cases, a lot of different stories, if there's a scenario where, somebody makes a decision to unalive themselves, what you always do is you try to look at their life preceding that decision. Because there's usually indicators there that say this person was in a state of mind that ultimately led to them making that decision. Yeah. And what's so strange about Amy's case is the fact that she is the complete polar opposite. There is not a shred of evidence in her life leading up to that morning that would indicate that. Not a single shred.
Right.
And I think, and I would be lying if I said that isn't one of my biggest motivations, is to try to put a lot of that BS to rest. So I recorded episode 3 last night, and I was working early this morning. I was going through and editing it, and you walked through the script with me the other day, and there are a couple of parts in there where it's very direct about that group of people. Yeah. And I went back and I listened to the way I delivered it when I recorded it, and I'm like, you could feel I could feel the emotion coming through my words, because I think that's such a distraction. I think it's a cheap explanation. And what I find most disturbing is that people who have that view, like, they are tribalistic about it. Yeah. Like, they are not going to let themselves be convinced. So the only thing that we can do is tell that story harder and with more conviction, with more certainty. And that's hopefully one thing that I can do through this podcast.
Yep, I agree. And we appreciate you greatly. There was someone on here, Lenny, and I don't know if he or she is still on, but to your point about telling the whole story, when we were talking about Tom earlier, this person said that Tom was irrelevant and that's why he got cut. He wasn't irrelevant. He's the one that was dating Amy. He was dating Amy. He was working with her for months leading up to, but then they started dating in December. They're dating January. They're dating February. They're dating March. That spoke to Amy's mindset. That is relevant. We know what was going on in her life. And to not include him was such a smack in the face. I feel like it was like, that part of your life, Amy, is not important. We're just going to focus on the part that we can create some sensationalism in. So we're going to go back and talk to some girlfriends from years ago, rather than what she was currently doing.
So this is something that I can say, and I don't know that Ron, Ivor, or Brad would ever say this, but to me, that's journalistic opportunism that goes beyond the bounds of decency. because at the end of the day, that was her life leading up to that. And what it reflects is it reflects that Netflix had a very clear intent about the narrative they wanted to spin, and truth be damned.
Yeah. Well, my point back to Lenny is to say, because they chose to leave out Tom, because they didn't tell you that Tom went back to Curacao, because they leaned on a story from ex-girlfriends from years before Amy even went missing, what it did was created a narrative that Amy was unhappy and that maybe Amy had jumped. That's the part why it's relevant, because if everybody knew that Tom existed and Tom was dating her and how happy that she was, that narrative would have never come up. Nobody would have been out there. They were like, oh no, she's just bisexual. She likes girls and guys, and she just happened to be dating a guy at the time that she went missing. So that's why it's important, Lenny, because without telling the whole story, then you're left with only part of the story, and it was a false narrative, and it made people think that she jumped. So half of the people that watch that show don't think that we need to keep looking for Amy, but that's because they believed that false narrative that was out there. So that's why it's important to us to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Yeah. A couple of things in here real quick. Iva did say that it was her that ended up giving the tape to the FBI. I know somebody was asking, like, well, how did the FBI eventually get it? Iva got a copy of it from, well, Chris Fenwick's brother had contacted and then connected. And so Chris got that tape to the Bradleys, and Iva said it's her that got it to the FBI. Someone else asked if we have ever spoken to Sloan Bella. I don't mean to be mean or hateful when I say this, but we've never had two psychics or two mediums ever say the same thing. So after 28 years, we kind of lose a little faith in that. It's not that we're not open to it or not that we wouldn't listen to it, but kind of just wish one of them would have been right, in the past 28 years. So, yeah, that's where we're at on that. There was a Kimberly that asked about sightings, any recent. And so I do want to say that there was one thing that was stated on the show that probably shouldn't. And that was about the pings that we were getting on the website. And people constantly are asking about that. Is there any updates? Well, quite frankly, that's not something that should have been put out there to begin with. So we definitely will not be updating the public about that information moving forward. So that's just not something that you share publicly. And as far as sightings, there are things I get included on the submission tips when people are submitting tips. There are people that feel like they have seen Amy every single day. So I see them coming in and I'll look at them. I'm like, yep, that ain't Amy. But the family's looking at them as well. So are there sightings? There's people sending tips like that all the time. But the ones that are credible, that we actually think actually are legitimate and could be something, then we have a team of people that are looking into that. But again, that's not stuff that we can just come out here and talk about openly. For the safety of Amy, and even for the people that it's not Amy and they just look like Amy, we have to protect them too, in a way. And we don't want to draw all kinds of attention to them when they're just like, I just happen to look like Amy. So there's a lot of things that go into that. But yeah, we get tips constantly all the time, and we're always constantly working on them. Someone asked if there were clues in the luggage, and as far as I know, that answer is no. I have never heard Iva or Ron or Brad tell me anything that was found in that luggage that was a clue. And if it was, I'm sure she'll get me up to speed on that. We can talk about that next Tuesday. Iva, I don't know this, but someone asked if Amy or Brad or any of you had been in any of the nightclubs, the Viking Lounge or the that pool area deck on either of the other nights, or were you only up there on that particular night? I don't know the answer to that. So if you want to answer that in the chat here, that would be great. And I do want to say there's somebody named Fawn Lene that said I missed their question. I scrolled back and I'm not seeing it. So if you would mind putting your question back in here, I would appreciate that. And then while you're doing that, I'll go back. I'm just going to remind y'all it's getting close to 8:30. So We're going to keep these to an hour each week. I am recording this. I am going to upload them over on our YouTube channel, The Amy Bradley is Missing. So if you missed it, you can go back and watch what Chris had to say or what Midnight Mystery Archive had to say and get that information. But, we're always going to, end with a couple of things. And actually, I'm not going to do this tonight, but I will tell you, what's important to us is that if we're going to do this, we also want to make sure that we're giving time to other families that have missing family members or cruise victims. And so we were going to talk tonight about Rebecca Corium, but it's close to 8:30, so I'll save that. We can talk about that one next Tuesday as we're wrapping up. But a few things I want to throw out here, and I'm going to go right back to you first, Midnight Mystery Archive. When you go and you watch that podcast, there is an offer in there from Invisaware.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about Invisaware until he told me about it. But it's necklaces, it's bracelets, it's
So they're personal safety devices, and what they do is basically you tap them as a button if you're in danger, and it sends your GPS location to whoever you've set up as your, primary emergency contact. And what I'm doing during the course of the 12-part series is the way it's structured is anybody who buys through my link, I get a small commission. It helps offset some of my costs for the production of the podcast. But during the 12 weeks, anybody who buys, you get 10% off your first order. And I've committed that I will donate 100% of any commissions I earn during these 12 weeks to the Bradleys GoFundMe to have some additional resources there to help with their continued investigation. I'm really proud to do that, and I'm happy to do it.
And we love you for that. So definitely wanted to let's see. Someone real quick. Someone asked, "Are there some credible leads?" There's not hundreds and hundreds of credible leads, but that's why we said we get a lot of leads, and we know right away it's not Amy, so we just keep it moving. But on the credible leads, we work them, and we just keep that kind of information close to our chest. And let's see. Somebody asked about if the Tic Tacs were ever, I don't think so. I think that was just something that Ron had seen and kind of thought in that moment, but I don't think there was anything, I don't think they took those Tic Tacs or anything. I think that was him just kind of like making an observation, but if I'm wrong about that, they'll be sure to correct me on that. And Jared asked about if Chris Fenwick knew who that person is that's running on the balcony, and I can tell you I've already asked him that myself. That was a completely different part of the night, and that is definitely not Amy. Like, I think somebody pulled that. I think, Chris, you explained it before.
Yeah, the confusion about that was when I made that compilation tape that's on YouTube, I was making it for another production company, and I offered up that shot because, one, yellow's in it, two, it's general kind of B-roll of the tape. It was never intended to say, see, look, there's Amy. If I had thought I had seen Amy, I would have labeled it, circled it, put an arrow on it like I did with the other shots. Just coincidence that somebody was running.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then let's see. Is there a possibility that the second guy opened the bees door for Yellow to convince? You might want to send me a message on what you are meaning with that, because I'm not following you on that question. But send it to me and we can circle back on it next week for sure and get that answer for you. I don't want to leave you hanging. But I am going to go back through this. If there's other questions we've missed, I'll lead off with them next Tuesday. Go hit amybradleyismissing.com. Go check it out. That's the new website. That's where also you can get information on how to submit a tip. You can submit it right there on the website, or you can send a message to amybradleyismissing@gmail.com, or you can call the 804-789-4AMY, 4AMY, which is 4269. People are always asking about how they can help. So we are going to have a page up on that website soon that says how you can help, and they'll have a bunch of different options on there so that you can feel free to do whatever it is that you feel good about doing. But I'd say right now, the biggest thing that people can do for us, especially here on TikTok, is keep talking about Amy, keep putting her name out there. Encourage people to watch Midnight Mystery Archives podcast, encourage them to come back here to the forum, encourage them to go over and watch the videos that are posted on Brad's X account. Every single interview that he's done is over there on his X account. So if they just go and follow him, they can scroll back and see a bunch of the information that's been put out there to correct the narrative that was, in that Netflix show. There is a link tree. So if you go to Linktree, it's Linktree/find Amy Bradley. That has a link to everything, a link to Brad's X account, to our Instagram page, to our Facebook page, a link to the Amy Alert petition. That is another person that I want to have come up here soon. Oh, hold on, I'm talking. Sorry, I ran over my hour, so I had to put my little puzzle piece together. I'm wrapping this up real quick. I do want to have Kendra come up on this live in the future. She is the one that came up with the whole Amy Alert petition. And if you don't know what that is, just go over to change.org and do a search for Amy Alert, and it'll come up and it'll explain all of that. So I've got that on my list. On the coming Tuesdays, we'll spend more time on that. But I do want to just throw that out today, since it is, March 24th. I think as many people as we can get to go over there and sign that petition would be a nice gift to the Bradleys. And don't forget to go watch Midnight Mystery Archive episode 1 came out today. If you have questions, feel free to message us. We always respond, and we try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you, Chris, for joining. Thank you, Midnight Mystery Archive. Thank you, Stacy. Sorry we didn't get to the missing person, but we'll make sure we get to that next week. So thanks for your questions. I'll look through it. I am going to record this and upload it on YouTube later on. So thanks so much. Y'all have a wonderful
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.